wasn't easy for Zhang Xuan to arrange everything properly with Fatty and send him away. Only then did he realize that the sun is already setting in the west and it is about to turn dark soon. Looks like I only have 5 students. He shakes his head. Today is the last day to recruit students. Judging from the current time, it is probably the end of the recruitment. Initially, he thought that he wouldn't even recruit a student. He didn't expect that he would end up pulling 5 students in. For a teacher who scored the worst in the teacher qualification examination, it isn't a bad result. Closing the doors to the classroom, Zhang Xuan follows the path back to his room based on his memory. As a teacher of the academy, he has a dormitory room of his own. However, it is only a small room of around a dozen meters square large. Soon, he reaches the dormitory. Pushing the door open and looking at the sight within, he couldn't help but sigh. His previous self really had it bad. Not mentioning how the room is small, it is extremely humid. Mold is growing on some of the bedding and such. He really has no idea how that fellow managed to survive like this. Let's forget about this first. Lessons are going to start tomorrow, so I have to first ascertain my level of cultivation and try training a bit. Since he isn't hungry now anyway, Zhang Xuan follows the method he recalls in his memories and sits with crossed legs on the bed. As a transcender, although he has inherited the memories of his previous self and isn't foreign to cultivating, he is still quite excited at the thought of growing stronger. After he is done with the recruitment, it is about time for him to solidify his cultivation. No matter what, in this world, strength reigns supreme. The Library of Heaven's path is capable of identifying others' meaning and flaws, allowing him to easily break through the defenses of opponents of the same level. However, if his enemy is much stronger than he is, even if he is able to identify the gaps in their attacks, he is unable to keep up with them speed-wise. Before he could injure his opponent, he might already have been severed into multiple pieces like a lab rat. Thus, even though the Library of Heaven's path is formidable, it doesn't ensure his invincibility. If he wants to become stronger, cultivation is the way to go. The cultivation technique of my previous self is called the Hongtian 9-Dan formula. It is a skill created by the founder of Hongtian Academy. The skill consists of 9 dans, with each of the dan corresponding to the cultivation realm of the cultivator. He recalls the skill memorized in his head. There are 9 dans to a cultivator and every level opens up a new realm. The higher one climbs, the harder it is to cultivate. Hongtian 9-Dan formula is one of the most common cultivation technique in Hongtian Academy. It also consists of 9 dans, which correspond to the cultivator's 9 dans. Right now, I am the weakest of all of the teachers in the academy. In the academy, almost all teachers have reached Fighter 4 Dan, leaving him to be the only 3 Dan. Thus, he has to train harder to catch up to them. Following the exhalation method in his memory, he focuses his concentration. In an instant, countless bright particles appear before him, as he slowly inhales and exhales while absorbing them. Gradually, the zhenqi within his dantian enriches. After cultivating for an unknown period of time, Zhang Xuan opens his eyes and shakes his head. This is way too slow. Even though he has inherited the memories of his previous self, his consciousness still remains that of an earthling. He finds it difficult to be sitting still, to cultivate for long periods of time. Especially upon viewing the process of the gathering of zhenqi, he feels even more helpless. Gathering zhenqi refers to the action of pulling and gathering in the spirit particles in the air and suppressing them together. Just like the stacking of logs, they would be accumulated to form a river. This is an extremely huge project. There are some cultivators who persist in it every day without fail, and fills up their dantian within 3 years, to break into higher realms. It is a work that requires accumulation over time. To cultivate so blandly for multiple years? You might as well kill him. Oh, That's right. Although the Hongtian 9-dan formula is the most popular cultivation technique in the academy, it isn't the strongest one. I can use the Library of Heaven's path to seek out its flaws and find a way to correct them. Once I correct the flaws, won't my training be much more efficient? A thought pops into his mind. There are different tiers to cultivation technique as well. Better cultivation technique allows one to cultivate faster, while the weak ones cause one to cultivate at a slower pace. Could it be that the better cultivation technique has fewer flaws, causing the difference between the two? Other people might be unable to improve their cultivation technique, but Zhang Xuan is different. With the Library of Heaven's path in hand, he could make use of it to seek out the flaws in it, and think of a way to correct them. If he were to create a cultivation technique, where even the Library of Heaven's path is unable to find a flaw in, won't his cultivation speed soar significantly? At this point, Zhang Xuan stands up, places the Hongtian 9-dan formula in his palm, and starts flipping through it. Who? Just as he expected, the library in his mind jolts and a book with the exact same name appears in it. Opening the book gently, he realized that there are countless flaws on the Hongtian 9-dan formula on it, numbering more than 1,000. This is the skill that I was training with a moment ago? Zhang Xuan is shocked. Just a simple 3-dan and there are countless flaws in it, isn't this way too much? It is just like eating a vegetable full of worms. Zhang Xuan feels that it is already incredible that his cultivation hasn't disappeared after training in that skill. What about the other cultivation techniques? As a teacher, there are quite a few books in his room: Supreme for Inscription, Heaven Meridian Technique, Lotus-aku Point Breakthrough Mind. As he casually picks each of them and flips through them, the library would automatically compile a corresponding book on it that records all kinds of flaws in the skill. For these skills, the flaws that are recorded exceeds 3,000. That is even scarier than the Hongtian 9-dan formula. This won't I die out of exhaustion while searching for a way to correct all of those? After taking a look, Zhang Xuan feels like he is about to go mad from frustration. It is hard to find a correct path when there are more than 1,000 flaws in a secret manual. It is like having 1,000 different paths before you, and each of which have countless diversions to them. Even if the Library of Heaven's path is capable of ascertaining whether the path is right or not, finding the most accurate path would definitely tire him to death. Right now, my cultivation is at Fighter 3-dan zhenqi pinnacle, just a little bit away from breaking through. Right now, I only have to find the flaw in the secret manual regarding this aspect and correct it. Upon seeing the countless mistakes in Hongtian 9-dan formula, he knows that it is impossible for him to resolve them in a short period of time. Thus, he flips the manual to the very last page. It is difficult to train in the Fighter 3-dan, but the last step to breaking through is significantly easier. As he expected, there are only 10 flaws in this page. Error in the method in sensing the spirit in the air, error in manipulating the flow of spirit particles, error in guiding the gathered spirit to flow through the Yang meridian. The 10 flaws that written here are detailed clearly. The Library of Heaven's path only records flaws, it doesn't list methods to resolving them. It isn't easy to search for the correct path one should take. Right. It seems that the parts of the Fighter 3-dan breakthrough method in the other books have different flaws from this. A thought flashes through his mind as he recalls what is written in the other secret manuals. Thus, he flips through the other books to view the portion of it about breaking through the zhenqi realm. It is indeed as he recalls. Although there are mistakes in those as well, their errors are in different aspects. If it isn't marked as an error, then it should be correct. Zhang Xuan's eyes lit up. He immediately grabs pen and paper and jots down the correct portion of each of them. Soon, a new cultivation method appears before him. Let's see if there are errors in this. With a faint smile, he grabs the book that he had just written and the library of heaven's path jolts once more. A similar book appears, just that this time, there's only one error in it. After researching for a moment longer, he corrects this final error, and uses the library of heaven's path to ascertain once again. Indeed, all of the errors have been filled up and it is in its perfect form. This is the most precise method to break through Fighter 3 Dan realm. Let me give it a try. Looking at the contents he wrote himself, Zhang Xuan nods his head excitedly. He hurriedly gets into position and starts to cultivate. Relax my body and allow my pores to open, as though I am sinking into a tub of spirit air. Every single pore of mine is a complete life form by itself, breathing by its own will. Cultivating through this method, although he isn't very used to it at the start, it didn't take long for him to feel the spirit and the surroundings surge into him. The spirit absorbed by a single pore may not be much, but when all of the pores of a body are undergoing the same process concurrently, the absorption speed is one to behold. The spirit in the air gathers like a flowing river, forming a giant flood in his body and rushes towards his dantian. Boom! An explosion echoes from his spirit sea. Initially, he was just a step away to breaking through his bottleneck. At the current moment, zhenqi overflows from his dantian and courses through his entire body, enriching his muscles and bones, generating a refreshing sensation. Fire for Dan, pigu realm. This is too fast. Zhang Xuan's eyes widen. Based on what is recorded on the Hongtian 9 Dan formula, he would need to take at least 3 to 5 months to break through, and this would still require a certain amount of luck. After slightly modifying the skill to correct the flaws on it, how long did he take in comparison? 10 minutes? 5 minutes? Probably, he didn't even take 3 minutes to successfully achieve a breakthrough. This furthermore, despite only correcting the breakthrough method for Fighter 3 Dan Pinnacle, the purity of the zhenqi he absorbed is incomparably pure, containing much more power, as compared to the ones he cultivated in the past. If the zhenqi he cultivated in the past is sloppy mud, then this wave is a clear spring water without any impurities in it. There are also different tiers to zhenqi: superior, intermediate and inferior. The higher the quality, the more clear it would be, and the further one would be able to climb in the future. In the past, the zhenqi he cultivates is murky and probably of inferior quality. The ones he are cultivating is so clear that you could see through it. Most probably, it is zhenqi of superior quality. Didn't they say that if one wants to cultivate superior zhenqi, they would require a god or saint cultivation technique? There are different tiers to a cultivation technique as well, namely god, saint, spirit, phantom and mortal. In each tier, they are classified further into inferior, intermediate, superior and pinnacle. Based on rumors among cultivators, one would need at least a saint cultivation technique in order to cultivate superior zhenqi. Hongtian 9 Dan formula is the lowest mortal cultivation technique, so how could it cultivate zhenqi of such quality? It is the library of heaven's path. Zhang Xuan clenches his fist. He is still cultivating the Hongtian 9 Dan formula, but as he managed to avoid the mistakes recorded on it and followed the correct path upwards, he is able to gather superior zhenqi. It seems that what is recorded on the library of heaven's path is accurate. The Hongtian 9 Dan formula is indeed too far from perfection. If so, with the help of the library of heaven's path, could it be possible for me to create a book of saint or even god cultivation technique? Zhang Xuan's eyes twinkle. Needless to say, Hongtian Academy, even those top sects might not even have god or saint cultivation technique. Besides, even they have it, it is hidden deep inside the sect, and normal people would be unable to obtain it. What he wants to do is to create such a skill, so that his training would be more efficient so as to hasten the rate of the rise of his cultivation by leaps and bounds. I don't have any 4 Dan cultivation method. Let me go to the teacher compendium pavilion to take a look. Practicing the Hongtian 9-dan formula, the cultivator can only retrieve the secret manual for the next realm, after breaking through their current realm. At this moment, he only has the cultivation method for 3-dan. He has yet to see the one for 4-dan. Walking out, the sun hasn't set for too long, and there are still quite a few passers-by on the road. The bright moonlight reflects on the surface of the pavement, dyeing it with a layer of silver. A few couples who had just tasted the forbidden fruit are snuggling under the tree, as they whisper sweet nothings to one another. Even so, the surroundings have a serene atmosphere. Zhang Xuan didn't bother himself with these. Instead, he hastens his footsteps and soon, a giant pavilion appears before him. The compendium pavilion is split into two main sectors, teacher and student. Within it lies the compendium of all kinds of secret manuals and cultivation techniques. It is one of the most important locations in the entire academy. Elder Mo. Walking to the entrance, he bows to an elderly, who is sitting at a proximity from the great door. Elder Mo is one of the guardians of the compendium pavilion. It is unknown what realm he has reached, but it is said that he is ranked among the top in the academy in terms of his strength. However, as he hasn't fought for many years, no one could tell his actual strength for sure. You're here. You have reached Fighter 4-dan? Elder Mo looks over and strokes his sparse beard. It is just luck. Zhang Xuan doesn't try to conceal the fact that he has reached Fighter 4-dan. Good, good. Train harder, the academy still needs young blood like you. Elder Mo nods his head in satisfaction. Yes. Zhang Xuan doesn't continue speaking and instead lifts his leg to walk into the room. The moment he leaves, Elder Mo shakes his head and laments, he is a good child, just that he is lacking a little in talent and is slightly too slow in his cultivation. Other cultivators take around 2 years to break through Fighter 3-dan, whereas Zhang Xuan took a whole 3 years to do so. His talent is indeed subpar. Upon reaching Fighter 4-dan, if he were to train properly, he should still be able to become an average teacher. Just that, I hope he doesn't score too badly for him teacher qualification examination the next time. After muttering for a bit, Elder Mo doesn't go on any further and shuts his eyes once more. Zhang Xuan is one of the more polite ones among the numerous young teachers. He doesn't really like him, but neither does he dislike him. It is just that he finds it lamentable for him to be lacking in talent. Oblivious to the mutterings of Elder Mo, Zhang Xuan walks into the compendium pavilion. Although the Hongtian Academy's compendium pavilion is of significant size, nowhere paling in comparison to the working location of his previous life, it is still much smaller than the Library of Heaven's Path in his mind. The two aren't even on the same level. He walks quickly to the cultivation techniques section, and to the 4th row of it. Indeed, the Hongtian 9-dan formula 4-dan cultivation technique is in here. Reaching out to grab it, he casually flips through it. Who? A similar secret manual appears in his mind. Taking a look, it is around the same as the one for 3-dan. There are more than 1,000 flaws. There are other secret manuals here as well. Let me take a look at them as well. After the prior experience with breaking through, Zhang Xuan doesn't focus on the flaws in it, and instead looks towards the bookshelf before him. On the bookshelf of the 4th row, there is an amazing amount of different kinds of cultivation technique manuals. They are all cultivation techniques for 4-dan, and there is plenty of notes and explanations in them left behind by predecessors. Just by rough look, there are around a few thousand of them. If it is someone else, their eyes would definitely blur from the sight. After all, there are so many books with countless notes left in them. Furthermore, some of the theories for the cultivation techniques are at ends with each other, so it is hard to gauge whether which one is the right one. If one were to randomly cultivate without knowing better, it is possible for them to go berserk. However, Zhang Xuan is different. Possessing the library of heaven's path, he is capable of telling which one is the right one. He doesn't hesitate to grab a book and flip through it. A similar book appears in his mind. Zhang Xuan doesn't stop and picks up the next one. He isn't browsing through them nor picking them. Rather, he is trying to increase the number of books in the library of heaven's path, so that he could derive a more precise cultivation method. Hulala. The sound of flipping pages fills the entire room. A weak will. Impatient and unrealistic. Hearing those words, Elder Mo frowns. Since Zhang Xuan has already chosen to cultivate in the Hongtian 9-dan formula, then he shouldn't think about any other skills. He should make use of the time to copy the formula for the 4-dan, so that he can analyze it and start training. Although it is possible to make use the strengths of others, to make up for the flaws of one, the more miscellaneous knowledge one reads, the easier it is for one to get impatient and rash. In the end, it is a small thing if he achieves nothing in the end. If things go wrong, it is very possible for him to go berserk and ruin his cultivation. 30 years ago, a talented genius blessed with great talents, who thought he is much greater than others, insisted on looking through the various cultivation techniques to create an ultimate one tailored to him. In the end, due to reading too many manuals, he became uncertain of the route he should walk on and his cultivation went berserk. As an individual, he became insane as well. Being greedy would cause indigestion. This is the absolute truth and reality. For him to take 3 years to break through zhenqi realm, his talent is apparent. With such talent, he should just obediently cultivate 4-dan of Hongtian 9-dan formula. Yet, he chooses to flip through other manuals. Is he just trying to seek for something thrilling? With one look, one could tell he is an unrealistic fellow. The good impression that he holds towards Zhang Xuan disappears without a trace. Putting on a show just to obtain the fleeting praises of the crowd. After a cold triumph, he realizes that Zhang Xuan is just casually flipping through without taking a careful look at them. Elder Mo's eyebrows knit even closer together and he feels a little disgusted with him. If one were to study those manual closer, even though they are being unrealistic, they would still obtain some knowledge on them. However, this fellow simply casually flips through it, and given the speed he flips at, even Elder Mo himself is unable to look through the contents properly. If so, what can a lad who had just reached Fighter 4-dan see? Now, he is truly putting on a show to obtain the fleeting praises of the crowd. The Academy's culture is really degenerating, getting worse with each passing generation. After those words, he shuts his eyes, refusing to bother with this unrealistic fellow anymore. I'm done. His pace of browsing is extremely fast. He is able to finish flipping through a normal manual in just 1 or 2 breaths. In 2 hours, he finished browsing through all of the cultivation manuals and thousands of identical books had appeared in the library of Heaven's Path. Time to return to assess them. Knowing that his aim has been achieved, he smiles and walks towards the outside without hesitation. You aren't going to copy any notes? Seeing him leaving empty-handed, Elder Mo couldn't resist asking. Even if he is unrealistic, he should at least copy the secret manual, so that he can analyze it after returning to his living quarters. Coming and leaving empty-handed, are you coming here to play? It's okay, I'm actually just taking a casual look, unsure about what the other party is thinking about. Zhang Xuan smiles and takes his leave. Taking a casual look? Frivolous. The Academy should punish this fellow. How can such a frivolous person be a teacher? Elder Mo waves his hand in anger. Cultivation manuals are the core of every cultivator and every cultivator should hold some respect towards them. However, this fellow only came to take a look and returns back after casually flipping through them. His behavior is unacceptable. Looks like he should have a talk with the principal to deal with these teachers, who are sullying the culture of the Academy. Returning back to his living quarters, Zhang Xuan takes out pen and papers and flips through the Hongtian 9 Dan Formula 4 Dan manual to copy down the correct portions of it. Then, he takes out another book and copies down the correct portions as well. After flipping through a few of them, Zhang Xuan rubs his temples. It is actually quite troublesome and tiring to flip through a few thousand books like that. It isn't as simple as he thought it would be. Just when he is thinking about how he could hasten his pace, his mind suddenly jolts again. The thousands of books that was just compiled in the library of Heaven's Path crumple and slowly merge as one. Wing. The few thousand books merged together completely with a crisp sound, to form a single book. There isn't any name on the book. Zhang Xuan casually flips through it. This is the compilation of the correct roots in the few thousand secret manuals? After taking a look at it, Zhang Xuan's face flushes red from excitement. Previously, he was still troubled by how he could find the correct root out of a few thousand of books. It would have been an arduous task taking a long period of time. Never in his dreams would he expect that the library would compile it automatically. This book, there isn't a single flaw in it. The nameless book is the compilation of all of the correct cultivation root, and there isn't a single flaw in it. The contents of it is no longer Hongtian 9 Dan formula or any one of the individual manual that was compiled into it. It could be said to be something no one has ever seen before. Since it is the correct method chosen and compiled by the Library of Heaven's Path, let's call it Heaven's Path Divine Art. A thought flashes through his mind and he decides on the name of the nameless manual. Wing. As though sensing his thoughts, the empty cover trembles and 4 words appear on it. Heaven's Path Divine Art.
I know you told your friend you're not okay, and tell me what's wrong and why you